presenters and all those who are watching live from TVW to the Senate Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee meeting this morning. We are going to go a little out of order because we have one of our favorite prime sponsors. They're all my favorite. And so we're first going to hear 5652. Staff, can we please get a briefing?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Matt Shepard, Conning Source staff. Senate Bill 5652 relates to reducing environmental and health disparities and improving the health of Washington state residents in large port districts. The committee heard the original bill last session, and the hearing today is on a proposed substitute, which is posted in the EBB. As background, port districts in Washington that operate an airport serving more than 900 scheduled jet flights per day are authorized to undertake noise abatement programs to alleviate the impact of jet noise on the surrounding area. These programs may only be undertaken in an impacted area as defined in state law. For several years, the Port of Seattle and the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, have contracted to install noise mitigation retrofits, such as double or triple paned windows, often referred to as port packages, at qualifying properties to address significant noise from airport operations. In 2024, the legislature established the Port District Equity Fund. The fund is administered by the Department of Commerce and is used to provide grants to eligible port districts for noise mitigation programs. In 2019 and 2020, respectively, the University of Washington and the King County Department of Public Health released separate studies regarding the air quality and health effects on communities near the Sea-Tac airport. More information on these studies is included in the bill report. Turning to the proposed substitute before you, it requires the University of Washington Department of Environmental and Health Sciences, which I'll just refer to as UW, to research and develop tools to evaluate the human and environmental health impacts of aviation activity near the Sea-Tac airport. UW must complete this work by June 1st, 2027, update it biennially, and use a variety of techniques, data, and community participation. By July 1st, 2027, Commerce must convene and facilitate a work group comprised of several specified representatives from the Port of Seattle, UW, state and local agencies, municipalities, and community. The work group is assigned several tasks, including reviewing UW's research and tools and creating and updating a mitigation plan. Then by December 1st, 2027, based on the mitigation plan and after consultation with the work group, the King County Department of Public Health must, among other things, implement priority one-year mitigation strategy pilot projects, assess them, determine which are most viable for broader implementation, and submit findings to the work group. Commerce must also administer a new grant program to assist qualifying organizations in broadly implementing these projects. And qualifying organizations include the Port of Seattle, community organizations, certain municipalities, and others represented on the work group. Funding from the Port District Equity Fund may be used for the grant program, and the Port of Seattle is granted authority and required to expend funds to mitigate aviation-related air quality and noise impacts, including to remedy deficient port packages. And finally, by July 1st, 2028, the state auditor must conduct a comprehensive evaluation of the Port of Seattle and FAA's port packages and deliver a report, among other things, on the amount of funds provided to and used by the Port of Seattle to install these packages, a cost estimate for replacing or repairing the failed packages, and additional steps the port, the legislature, municipalities, and others can take to adequately address these packages. A fiscal note on the proposed sub was requested, but it's not yet available, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. I don't see any questions, so thank you very much. And Senator Orwell, come tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Tina Orwell. I have the honor of representing the 33rd Legislative District in South King County. I first want to thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being part of our listening tour. In the interim, I think it meant so much to the community to have you kind of hear what's going on. I remember when my son was in elementary school, he used to come home with a lot of asthma. And I was so angry, I thought, that school must have mold. It had never occurred to me that he was out in recess and that maybe he was impacted by the aviation fuels. And it was years later that I learned about the high rate of asthma in airport community. And it turned out the University of Washington had been doing work in different airports, including LAX and Atlanta. So that's when we really started partnering to learn more about these impacts. And what we learned is there's ultrafine particles that are related to Jet A fuel, and they pass the blood-brain barrier, and they cause inflammation in the human body. And so when King County Department of Health teamed with UW, they looked at the health conditions in our community, and they found the closer you live to the airport, the shorter your lifespan, looking at 10 miles, 5 miles, and 1 miles. And they also, there's a map that shows children that go to emergency departments, and it actually lines up with the landing path, which is when there's the greatest amount of the ultrafine particles. And one of the things that Senator Kaiser, who I miss dearly, I will tell you, we had partnered up on an asthma intervention study after we had a 12-year-old girl die of uncontrolled asthma. And this has been so successful. The mitigation of the interventions and the HEPA filters and vacuums can reduce the particles by 80%. And kids now are having better attendance in school. They're using the relief inhalers more. And so, you know, I'm in front of you today to talk about failed packages, but it's really about health. I mean, you'll hear about easements and federal rules, but there's no one in my district that waived the right to good health, right? And we know that we can team up. I call it the trifecta of change, which is like our university, our health departments, our cities, our amazing community advocates, and the port to make a difference for this airport community. I was a little stunned. So the flights back in 94, there were 160,000 takeoff and landings. In 2024, there are 434,000 takeoffs and landings, and there's a planned expansion that would increase that by 20%. So really, the bill before you is an action plan. It's a partnership, right? What can we be doing to help this airport community? It is an important part of our economy, and it's going to continue to be, but there's so much we can do to mitigate the harm. And so, again, I think we need the partners at the table, including the port. And I think I feel really hopeful that we can move forward with these. And at the end of the day, we're all governmental entities. And this is our infrastructure, and this is about how do we support these activities. At some point, we're going to need a second airport or expansion of other airports in other areas. And so this is a template. We don't want to wait years for the federal government to do this. I think Washington, in many ways, can lead the way. So I appreciate you hearing this bill. Thank you.
I just have one quick question.
Yeah.
Are there airports that you think that have pointed to, like in other places that have really done a good job of this or are on the cutting edge that I should go learn more about?
Well, one of the places that we teamed up with was Boston.
Okay.
They have Logan Airport. Their state rep is awesome. But they had taught us about putting the HEPA filters in the schools because they had a huge reduction. The HVAC systems don't actually remove the levels of the HEPA filters. So they had already done a study, and so we did that in our schools in South King. They don't all have them, but a large portion. There's a San Francisco is starting to fix the failed packages. A lot of my residents, they can't see through the windows. They have mold that's affecting their indoor air quality. And it's been years, and none of those packages have been fixed. So I think there's models, but in some ways, UW and the research that's happening is leading the way on ultrafine particles, which aren't recognized by the FAA or the EPA at this point in time.
Senator Harris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I live a mile from PDX. The 49th and the 17th both butt up against PDX, Portland International Airport. This might be something that both Oregon and Washington should also take a look at. I know the 17th and the 49th are directly impacted by PDX and what happens at Portland International. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Senator Elias?
Thank you, Chair Shoemake. I was also dismayed to discover that I grew up in an overburdened community living next to Painfield. So even without the traffic of Sea-Tac, living near an airport can have challenges. I just wanted to comment, highlight, / ask your reaction to the work we're doing to advance sustainable aviation fuel, which also will reduce the fine particulate matter with those biofuels and hopefully build them right next to Benke's district at a new biorefinery.
Well, that's another place that University of Washington, they are looking right at the biofuels and the clean fuels. The thing I would tell you, and I do think it's one of the long-term solutions, but the highest concentration is upon landing, so it depends on where that plane fueled up. We can do everything right in our state, and we should, but all these planes coming from other areas may not be using that fuel, but we should lead the way, and it is exciting, and that should be part of the solution.
Well, thank you. Senator Slatter?
I just wanted to put a plug in for electric airplanes.
Hovercraft. No,
Yeah, or something like that, because there would be no particulates, and for short haul, at least flights, it might be valuable. But maybe my question would be, as new airports are considered, this mitigation is mitigation right now, but how do you prepare for, safety and health before, a new airport is built? And would that be considered here?
Absolutely, and I did sit on that committee that was the second airport with Senator Kaiser, and there was discussion about could we do a cleaner airport, right? Could we locate it? This is probably one of the only airports that's really smack in such a high residential area. There's very few, right? And so you would plan an airport that's not in a huge residential area, but you could be thinking of the cleaner fuels. You could be thinking about electrifying more. They were saying that it could be years before electrified planes, but maybe you have shorter hoppers that go from airport to airport as a starting point. So I think you plan green, right? But you also plan that the reality is there is harm, but there's things we can do, right? And if you treat an airport community well and you help the health and well-being, that might help cite the second airport.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Senator Orwell. And we are going to suspend the public hearing on 5652. We will come back to it. We just have some other schedules to deal with. And so we are going to open up the public hearing for 6124. Staff, can you give us a briefing?
Yes. Good morning, Senator Shoemake, members of the committee, Alicia Kinney-Clausen, staff to this committee. Before you is Senate Bill 6124, which concerns a study to create an appliance affordability index. For some quick background, there are federal appliance efficiency standards, and then federal law allows states to establish their own minimum efficiency and testing standards for products that are not covered by these federal appliance efficiency regulations. The Washington State Department of Commerce manages Washington's Appliance Efficiency Program. The bill before you requires a study conducted by the Department of Commerce to create an appliance affordability index. That index would consider appliance efficiency standards alongside the ease of maintenance, the availability of repair, estimated performance life, recyclability, and multiple other metrics that are defined in the bill. The study must evaluate what types of appliances would be included in the affordability index, as well as the feasibility of adapting the current appliance labeling standards. In completing the study, the Department of Commerce is required to consult with individuals with expertise in appliance standards, right to repair, appliance manufacturing, and other areas that are defined in the bill. A fiscal note is not yet available, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions, so Senator Elias, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Chair Shoemake, members of the committee. This bill is inspired mostly by my grandmother. My grandmother grew up in the Depression era in Finland, where times were very tough, and she's the one that taught me to reuse every margarine container and sour cream container, much to the chagrin of my roommates across time. She also, when they moved into their house in 1972 in Astoria after they immigrated here, they had a range in their home that when she died in 2022, they were still using. It's a Frigidaire Flare. I looked it up online actually because the design was really unique. The range was like up above where the elements were, and I was like, this must have been designed by a woman. And sure enough, I looked it up and it was designed by a woman. It was a very clever and creative design that lasted for over 50 years. I actually saw it at the Kennedy Library in an exhibit about life in the 60s. It was so popular. But it inspires me to think about the appliances that folks in that greatest generation had access to that lasted a long time. My grandfather also had to make some little repairs along the way to keep it going. And meanwhile, now in 2023, when I bought a house and moved into it and bought a freezer for my garage so that we could save things up like we do, that freezer lasted like about 2 years. Luckily, it was under warranty, got repaired, but it just dawned on me that today the ability of consumers to know the lifespan of the things we're buying is not as easy. I love going to the store and seeing like price per ounce on things and picking the thing that is most affordable. That same kind of metric doesn't yet exist for appliances. If you're rich enough, you can buy consumer reports, you can find information, but for a lot of Washingtonians, they can't afford that or maybe don't have the time. And so I think this bill would give us more information, and consumers should be able to make their choice. If they want to buy the cheapest one because that's all they can afford, that's fine, but they should also have a sense of what is the lifetime cost, what are energy costs, can you repair the thing as you make that purchase? I think in our market economy, giving consumers more information is better. Let them make the right choice for them. And as we think about affordability this session, there's so many things that families are struggling with. This is just one more little piece of information that could help them make the right choice for them. So commend the bill to you, and it's inspired by my late grandmother.
I don't see any questions. I do empathize with that. We have a dryer that we call the Princess. And so we will open up the public testimony. Madam Vice Chair.
We had a dryer we called the devil. Okay. I'd like to call up on remote Kate Riley. And we have 4 to testify, Madam Chair, and 3 are remote and 1 is in person. So I'll just call up each one. But you can have, I guess on deck would be Megan Smith. Thank you. Kate, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I was just promoted to panelist. Can you hear me as well, Vice Chair?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Katie Riley, and I am Vice President of Environmental Affairs and Industry Sustainability for the Consumer Technology Association, which goes by the acronym CTA. CTA is the trade association representing the U.S. consumer technology industry, including manufacturers of consumer electronics. I'm here today to respectfully oppose SB 6124. Which requires the Washington State Department of Commerce to assess the feasibility of developing an affordability index for appliances sold in Washington State. While the term appliance is undefined in Senate Bill 6124, our members could be in scope of any future affordability index in the state. We have a multitude of concerns that will be reflected in our written testimony that I'll submit after this hearing. But for today, I want to focus on our primary concern around the state-specific approach called for in this legislation. It is untenable for industry to comply with indexes or scoring systems that may be different from state to state. Products are not sold or marketed at the state level here in the U.S. Different scoring systems and multiple labels across different states would create confusion for consumers when purchasing products, especially in e-commerce, and would place significant burden on producers needing to comply with a patchwork of regulations. You may have heard about eco-design labels in the EU under their eco-design regulation. I want to bring that up because there's an important quote from the European Commission that they've stated around their eco-design regulations, and it's that, quote, "These regulations will play a central role in developing a strong, well-functioning single market for sustainable products in the EU," end quote. Countries in the EU, let alone states within countries in the EU, are not setting their own standards or metrics. It's a single market approach. And other countries that had attempted to move ahead of the EU, such as France and Belgium, have agreed to align with the EU approach moving forward. We're also seeing other countries, India, Colombia, Taiwan, moving toward alignment with the EU, understanding that competing indexes or scoring metrics just don't work for industry. If Washington is interested in a scoring system for products, it could recommend to Congress or the federal government to develop a U.S. or more ideally a North American market index aligned with the European Union, recognizing that a one market approach is needed. Oregon did recognize that a state approach to scoring was not the right path forward when it proposed last year a Senate joint memorial calling for the FTC and NIST to create a scoring system for repair of products. So I did want to point out that other states are exploring this and looking for kind of those alternative paths forward. So while we appreciate the intent here, we must oppose SB 6124. Washington should not move forward with a state-specific affordability index. So I thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions. And staff, if you could put the timer on for 2 minutes, please. Okay, Megan Smith, are you on the screen?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi. Thank you for being here. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Chair Shoemake, Vice Chairs Hans Latter, Ranking Member Benke, and the members of the Environment, Energy, and Tech Committee. My name is Megan Smith. I'm here today representing Washington Public Interest Research Group from their national office. WashPIRG is a statewide advocate for consumers with thousands of members in Washington, and I'm here to testify in support of SB6124. Nobody walks into an appliance store and thinks, I really want to buy something that breaks today. But we don't really have a way of knowing which products are designed to be repairable or long-lasting. They can be easy to fix or very hard, and it's not always clear at the point of sale which is which. We spoke to one appliance repairer in Nevada who gave an example. So some washing machines rely on water pressure sensors to work. That part can cost as little as $60 if you wanted to replace it. But some manufacturers solder them directly to circuit boards, which cost $200 to replace, which is a lot more. So that simple design choice makes the device a lot more expensive to repair, but you wouldn't know that while you were shopping. How can we know which products are easy to fix and which are not? We should work to develop an index that could relay that information to consumers. So in Europe, some countries are already using repairability scores, which give consumers a 1 through 10 score that measures affordability of parts and many other things. Manufacturers are already complying with France's program, and it's really popular with French consumers. A year after the scores were displayed, 71% had heard of the index, and 86% said it impacted their purchasing behavior. Appliances are also becoming more complex and reliant on software support from the manufacturer. But if the manufacturer ends that support, the products can become vulnerable to cyber attacks or stop working. So it's also really necessary for consumers to know how long they can expect software support for their products, which I think is also a metric that this bill would investigate. So developing this consumer-friendly affordability index would be really helpful. It would encourage a race to the top for repairability and market transparency. And this investigation is a great way to determine how best to do this and do the right thing for consumers.
Thank you.
So I urge you to vote favorably.
Thank you so much. Okay, next testifier is John Keene. John, if you can hear me, please unmute and...
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Keene with the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, which represents manufacturers of major portable and floor care appliances in the United States and Canada. We hear concerns of Senate Bill 6124, which would assess the feasibility of developing an affordability index for appliances sold into Washington State, and supports efforts to preserve product performance and durability, and they've made significant improvements in energy efficiency just over the last decade, which will be found in written comments. Manufacturers work hard to ensure that customers are satisfied not only at time of purchase, but throughout the product's useful life. First, I'm unclear on the focus on affordability relative to home appliances. Secondly, I do want to call out that not all appliances can be lumped together related to repairability. Major appliances like refrigerators and clothes washers have their own unique repair needs, while portable appliances repair not be the best option compared to replacement of those products. There are also different recyclability needs for each appliance. The index for a consumer may be deceiving when the scores may vary dramatically across appliances. Secondly, appliance repair, unlike other consumer products, often require handling of other high currents of electricity, gas, and water. So any evaluation needs to be considered in those expertise. Finally, as there is no uniform standard to test repairability in the United States, a lot of the study can be subjective. And finally, I mentioned before, the issue around the state-focused label creates significant compliance burdens and cost burdens, as manufacturers would have to segregate their products into Washington State if this were to move forward. But with that, we do not encourage this bill to move forward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Heather Trim, are you here? Oh, great.
Good morning. Heather Trim with Zero Waste Washington. And when I heard Senator Leas introduce the bill, I went, uh-oh, I'm old enough to be his grandmother. Because what I'd prepared is sort of the same. So when I was a kid, I hated our fridge. I don't remember what I hated about it, but my mom kept saying, nope, it's going to last 30 years. And every now and then, I'd come home every few years, and there'd be a repair person there repairing it. And sure enough, I'm sure it did last at least 30 years. And now, same, having a home, I am so upset every time an appliance doesn't last even 10 years. And I have big fights with my husband about this because I'm like, we're going to get it repaired. But the problem is the 50-50 rule, where it's just so expensive to repair the big thing. The analogy for this is the Maytag Man Repairman ads. And if you're old enough, you know these ads. It was a repairman who would be asleep or bored or whatever because he was waiting for the phone to ring to repair it. And that was a very, very successful ad campaign because they were trying to prove that Maytags were dependable and durable. And it was a compliment that the repairman was bored to the product quality. Well, that ad has evolved. And now it is a chiseled, buff He-Man who's now embodying the appliance, not the repairman. And so the idea is it's powerful. The appliance is powerful, not the old thing. The campaign's name, by the way, was Ole Lonely. So in terms of the question about why we shouldn't move forward in Washington, we do take leadership on environmental issues, and a provision could be added that if there is a national standard, we could then align with that national standard. I definitely think we should move forward, even though there's a fiscal note with this, because this is really about affordability, and it's about local jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I don't see any questions, and this is the final testifier. A total of 754 chose not to testify, pro 38, con 716, other 0.
All right, thank you very much. That closes the testimony. That closes the hearing for 6124. We will move to 5466. Staff, can we get a briefing?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kim Cushing, staff to the committee. Before you is a proposed second substitute, Senate Bill 5466, relating to improving reliability and the capacity of the electric transmission system in Washington state. For a brief background, the bill has been heard, and it was exec last session, a version of this bill, and it was passed off the floor of the Senate. It did not pass the House, and therefore it returned, and you are hearing the proposed second sub. Also, in the budget last year, the legislature provided $300,000 to the Department of Commerce to provide assistance and develop financing recommendations to increase transmission capacity in Washington. Turning to the proposed sub, there are two main parts. The first has to do with the Washington Electric Transmission Authority, which I'll refer to as WETA. It establishes WETA to, among other duties, support the expansion of and upgrades to the electric transmission system and be a statewide resource for transmission. The bill authorizes WETA to perform activities with respect to the developing transmission, including to adopt rules and operating procedures, exercise the power of eminent domain for land acquisition necessary to secure property or rights of ways for new transmission corridors for public use, enter into contracts and agreements, as well as partnerships with public or private entities, purchase, sell, lease, or exchange property, own electric transmission equipment and systems, although it may not exceed the extent or duration necessary or useful to promote the public interest, to select a qualified transmission builder and operator to build, finance, or operate an electric transmission project, and to sell a state-owned electric transmission project at any stage of development to an electric utility serving customers in Washington, a joint operating agency, the Bonneville Power Administration, or an independent transmission developer or operator. It requires WETA, when selecting a qualified transmission builder or operator or constructing a project, to follow specific labor requirements, including that all work is performed by either an electric utilities qualified electrical employees or a contractor that meets certain requirements. It creates a 10-member board of directors with specified expertise to provide oversight and advise WETA to be appointed by January 1st of 2027. It directs the board to hire an executive director by June of 2027, and it directs Commerce to provide administrative and staff support to the board until the ED is hired. It directs Commerce to identify high-priority transmission corridors, leveraging transmission plans from national and regional entities, as well as utilities and existing siting studies in an open and transparent process by October 30th of 2027. It then directs WETA to update the corridor identification study 5 years later and every 5 years thereafter. It establishes a tribal clean energy partnership work group to identify and evaluate opportunities for tribal participation in the development and ownership of clean energy facilities and infrastructure. It requires an interim report to the legislature by April of 27 and a final report by December of 27 with specific findings and recommendations. It directs this work group to hold at least one public meeting before its expiration in June of 2028. The bill establishes two accounts, an electric transmission operating account and a capital account, and it directs that information obtained by WEDA is critical energy infrastructure information or proprietary technical and business information that must be confidential and not subject to inspection or public disclosure. Turning to Part 2 of the bill, it provides a categorical exemption from the State Environmental Policy Act for upgrading or rebuilding an existing transmission line over 115,000 volts under specific conditions. It requires that proposals qualifying for this categorical exemption must follow specific steps as a condition of receiving a permit to ensure that the proposed activity avoids, minimizes, or mitigates harm to tribal, archaeological, historic, sacred, or cultural resources. This includes providing notice to the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, known as DAP, as well as the tribes, allowing for tribes and or DAP to request a survey to identify potential resources within the impacted right-of-way or the project area, and require the permitting jurisdiction and DAP, if resources are identified as a result of the survey, to work with the project applicant and impacted tribes to develop a plan to avoid, mitigate, minimize harm to the affected resources. It allows a project applicant, in lieu of the review process, to choose to opt into the standard review for all projects under SEPA. A fiscal note has been requested for the proposed sub, but it is not yet available. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
I don't see any questions, so thank you very much. You have heard this bill before. We brought it back to do some policy work on this and send it along. So we are faced with an increase in demand while meanwhile trying to meet our clean energy goals, and transmission has been one of the bottlenecks in this process. If we can't get these green energy projects connected to the grid, then we can't build them. I think there's also, I fear very much a cold snap with low snowpack and the reliability as we start to see constraints on the grid. That grid transmission is increasing costs for ratepayers. All of these, I think, are broad-based economic concerns. And I think of transmission as energy efficiency. So we need to do all we can in improving energy efficiency at our buildings and what we use. But there's also energy efficiency in transmission, where if we can reduce the congestion on the system, that's great. But also it means that we can use renewable resources from further away. We don't have to build as much to the peaks. So we can, if we can kind of mitigate those peaks by when there's a cold snap in Spokane, it may not be the same as time as a cold snap in where I live, Bellingham, right? And so we can try and use those resources more effectively. So we did a lot of work over the interim, trying to make sure that we're not getting in the way of some of the utilities and our PUDs, especially. Looking at the testimony, I know we need to do more work. And so I'm excited to hear what you all have to say, and we will continue to work on this. So with that, I turn it over to Madam Vice Chair for the testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we call up Hugo Huang, and on deck is John Rothland and Angus Duncan. Okay, we'll go ahead. John, why don't you go ahead, because Hugo's not in Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, John Rothland with the Vista. We signed in as other on this bill. We certainly support the efforts to bring about needed transportation. I think Senator Shoemake did a good job of describing the implications of having more transmission available to sustain reliability. What gives us pause is the concern that the creation of the authority doesn't necessarily remove the major hurdles that exist for building transmission, which is the extraordinary time and expense and uncertainty of siting and permitting. The transmission authority would not be necessarily offered any other advantages in this regard as an existing transmission developer. And so it would essentially shift the risk of the time and cost of doing this from a developer to the state. We do appreciate some of the work that's been done on this bill and the language that identifies the state as the owner and builder as the last resort, but we still think these are not appropriate roles for the state as it lacks the expertise. What we would support is a process by which the authority would be required to partner with the developer early in the process and provide assistance with pre-construction siting and permitting. So thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Angus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you as well. Please go
All right.
ahead. And as you're just setting up really quickly, I'd like to just make sure to call the next three people. Maya Gillette, Casey McLean, and Spencer Gray are on deck. Go ahead, Angus.
Thanks so very much, Madam Vice Chair, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Angus Duncan. I represent the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, particularly in its regional Northwest transmission planning work. I'm also a former Northwest Power Council chair, representing NRDC in the WestTech transmission planning process. We are broadly supportive of efforts such as this bill in both Washington and Oregon to develop tools, including transmission authorities proposed in both states, that will enable the state and the region to move forward with urgently needed transmission upgrades and new facilities that are sited with respect for community, cultural, and natural values. We support equipping these entities with the authority and the tools that will enable them to be effective in driving needed transmission projects to timely, and I emphasize timely, completion. In this regard, I would reference for you the WestTech 10-year transmission plan that will be announced on February 4th. It's expected to include some 9,400 miles of already planned and underway new regional transmission upgrades and another 3,300 miles of additional upgrades and new lines, all at a projected cost, I swallow when I say this, of some $60 billion. Our WestTech 20-year plan is still in development, but will have to address expected load growth of upwards of 2.5% per year through 2045. That's going to be a lot of needed transmission, and we are also, and of transmission impacts, so we're also urging early community contact, especially with tribal governments, and we are urging the adoption of regional priorities, beginning with load center resources such as energy efficiency. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I don't see any questions. Okay, if we could have Maya Gillette and Casey McLean, and then Spencer Gray, I believe, is on remote. So.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Good morning, Chair Shoemake.
Maybe just a little bit up.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Maya Gillette. I'm here with the Nature Conservancy, and I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 5466. We appreciate all the work that's gone in over the interim to this bill and some of the changes that were made to the technical aspects of the transmission authority. We feel good about the language where we've landed with that. I do want to just say broadly that TNC really strongly believes in the potential of a state transmission authority to both ensure continued, reliable, affordable, clean electricity, as mentioned in the sponsor's remarks, and to facilitate the building of essential transmission infrastructure in a least cost and least conflict way. And we also note that other states, such as Colorado and New Mexico, have pioneered this model with some success, and we think it's Washington's time to step up and follow that. I do want to note, you have already, and we'll probably hear more testimony about some of the other barriers to building and constructing transmission, and that this is not going to solve all the problems. And I don't disagree with that. I do just want to say that I think the comments of previous speaker on the lengthy process of siting and permitting, while really relevant to this, I think having a state transmission authority that can partner with developers early and provide that assistance, as mentioned in the testimony, is exactly why we think this should exist. And so we think there's a role for the state to play here. And we recognize it's not going to solve all the problems, but we're happy with the bill. We would like to see an amendment that includes some public financing authority in the bill. So we'd like to work with the sponsor and other members on including that language. But overall, thank you for your work on this.
Hi, good morning, Chair Shoemake and members of the committee. My name is Casey McLean, and I'm the Washington Policy Manager at Renewable Northwest, a clean energy advocacy organization. We're signed in today as pro, but we do have some suggestions for improvement. Overall, we strongly support opportunities for transmission expansion. Transmission authorities, as Maya mentioned, have been successful in other states at building much needed transmission, and categorical exemptions for transmission upgrades are an easy way to incentivize adding some of that much needed grid capacity. We support a lot of areas of the bill text and that have been refined since last session, and we appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. We understand Commerce is studying it, but we strongly suggest that the committee work to include bonding authority, which would be a key financial tool to finance transmission projects at low cost and low risk, which helps protect ratepayers in addition to getting these projects built. This will be a critical tool to ensure the effectiveness of the authority, and we strongly support this being added as soon as there's more clarity on the subject. We also support the concept of a SEPA CADEX for reconductoring, but we do have some concerns over the scope of the requirements laid out in section 12 and 13 and have submitted some written comments on that. Overall, Washington absolutely needs transmission solutions, and we're eager to work with the bill sponsors to improve the bill and add some more tools to our toolbox. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Spencer Gray on remote, and then we'll have Emily Moore, George Lynch, and Nicholas Garcia. Spencer, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Spencer Gray with the Northwest and Intermountain Power Producers Coalition, group of renewable developers and other power producers in Washington and the region. NIPSI strongly supports passing this bill. I want to thank Chair Shoemake and the sponsors for pursuing it again this session. The substitute in front of the committee has a number of positive changes, including language clarifying the authority's approach to new projects is supposed to be primarily as partners of existing transmission owners and developers, and pursuing a project on its own is really just a last resort. The substitute also clarifies the regulatory jurisdiction of transmission tariffs under the authority, which we found very helpful. NIPSI members have built transmission in the West, particularly in New Mexico, by partnering with the state. Hundreds of miles of high voltage transmission and billions of dollars of investment that would not have happened without the existence of a state transmission authority. So we hope that capital to invest in Washington can be brought off the sidelines into the state with the creation of an authority. We also strongly support the separate idea of some kind of transmission related exemption or accelerated review for upgrading existing rights of way and lines that are basically brownfield projects that deserve to move faster. I want to emphasize this bill is not a silver bullet. We need a number of complementary solutions to build more transmission, including on siting, and we hope that the legislature will pursue some of those other changes too, but this would be a very helpful additional tool. We do have a few technical amendments to suggest to the chair. And we also hope that revenue bonding authority could be added. That's been a powerful tool next door in Idaho to support particularly New Bonneville transmission that's largely debt financed. So this is a great start with this substitute, and we hope it can move forward this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you. Go ahead.
Great. Good morning, Chair Shoemake and members of the committee. My name is Emily Moore, and I am testifying in support of Senate Bill 5466 on behalf of Sightline Institute. Sightline is an independent, nonpartisan research and policy organization that has worked for more than 30 years in the Northwest. Every day, Washingtonians depend on a reliable grid to heat and cool our homes, run our businesses, power our schools and hospitals, and so much more. However, today, the state is entirely at the mercy of the Federal Bonneville Power Administration and individual utilities to build the grid it needs. This is no longer a smart strategy with electricity demand expected to rise and clean electricity deadlines fast approaching. Senate Bill 5466 would transform Washington from a hopeful observer to an active participant in building the energy infrastructure we all depend on. It would, as we all know, create a state transmission authority to identify and construct, in partnership with qualified developers, crucial grid projects that would allow Washingtonians to access the cleanest and cheapest power available. It would also make it easier to upgrade the grid, which is far faster and cheaper than building brand new lines. Sightline's research found that up to 40% of Washington's grid could be suitable for upgrade. I join other testifiers in encouraging the committee to grant the Transmission Authority the ability to finance projects, a change that would further save ratepayers money. This would also be consistent with Colorado and New Mexico's authorities. Washington has long enjoyed some of the most affordable and carbon-free electricity in the United States. Senate Bill 5466 can continue that legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have George Lynch. You're on. You can hear me. Please go ahead. And while we're waiting for that, we could have Nicholas Garcia, Peter Godlewski, and Leah Missick maybe come on up in a bit. George, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Shoemake and members of the committee. For the record, my name is George Lynch. I'm the Transmission Policy Lead at the Energy Policy Office in the Department of Commerce. I'm testifying as other today, as the full costs of this bill as currently structured are not in the governor's budget. Transmission constraints in the bulk power system are one of the greatest challenges to meeting Washington's clean energy goals and maintaining a reliable and affordable grid as we experience rapid load growth. The legislation has undergone an intensive stakeholder process since last session to improve the bill. In the version under consideration today, the authority will focus on identifying high priority corridors to prioritize lines that would not otherwise be built, using existing utility and regional transmission plans and siting studies. A transmission authority is a toolbox with a variety of optional tools that can help different types of transmission developers. The tools include permitting assistance, tribal engagement, local government support, and condemnation authority for rights-of-way. Transmission authorities do not supplant the transmission planning and operation and financing roles of utilities. Instead, they act as a critical backstop to fill market gaps and ensure that the transmission system that our state needs gets built. A transmission authority can take a state and regional perspective on transmission, looking beyond individual service territories, and identify the most cost-effective and consumer-friendly transmission solutions. And it can serve as a catalyst for new investment in transmission. Thank you, and we look forward to working on a path forward to meet the crucial need of our state for a more robust and reliable power transmission system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no questions, so Nicholas, why don't you go ahead and then.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, Chair Shoemake, Ranking Member Benke, and committee members. I'm Nicholas Garcia on behalf of the Washington Public Utility District Association. The 23 members of my association that provide electric service universally agree that there is an urgent need to expand and upgrade Washington's transmission system, especially the capacity to bring power across the Cascade Mountains to the I-5 corridor load centers. WPUTA greatly appreciates Chair Shoemake focusing legislative attention on this critical need by sponsoring the proposed substitute to engross substitute Senate Bill 5466. The substitute includes several really helpful provisions. First, it retains Part 2, which will ease permitting for projects that reconduct along existing pathways. It requires advanced consultation with electric utilities that serve retail customers in the area that the authority project would be located, and it requires that the authority consult with utilities that have transmission projects that could be otherwise affected by the authority's project. Finally, it provides the authority with the power of eminent domain. Nevertheless, we oppose this substitute because the authority's focus is not on the primary challenge to transmission development, which is permitting. It is Waputu's position that building and expanding the transmission needed for regional reliability should be the state's primary and highest purpose. Fortunately, we have a plan for that. And Chair, I'm not sure what his title is, but Angus Duncan talked about that. There is a coalition of federal, state, utility, and public interest groups that came together under the title, the Western Transmission Expansion Coalition, to develop a transmission plan. That plan will provide us guidance for how to move forward, and we suggest that you use that plan as the pathway for the things that should be happening in Washington. Thank you very much.
Nicholas, we absolutely want to do that. Like, nobody needs to redo this work. Is there language that you think needs to be strengthened to point towards that plan, or would you give me red lines on that?
Absolutely, and just for example, Section 3 of the plan, which provides the Department of Commerce with the role of figuring out or identifying critical pathways or corridors. We don't think that that's necessary because we think that those corridors are being identified through the WestTech process, as an example.
Okay.
But I will be happy to provide you red lines.
Thank you.
Leah, why don't you go ahead, and then Peter, or?
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm glad you're up here, Peter. Thanks for coming. Go ahead, Leah.
No worries. So Leah Missick here with Climate Solutions, here in support, although we think there are changes that will be critical as we move forward with this. So we believe that both elements of this bill, a transmission authority and making it easier to upgrade existing transmission, are both critical for bolstering our grid and bringing clean, affordable energy online. A state transmission authority will enable the state to take an active role in planning and developing new lines, and we appreciate the improvements made in the bill language since last session. There are a couple things we think are still important to address. We echo that adding bonding authority is critical for unlocking lower cost public financing, and also we see the authority as investing in projects that fill gaps rather than duplicating planned utility processes. We worked with a bunch of stakeholders on language over the interim, and we just want to see a clear process for utilities to notify the authority on potentially overlapping projects so it is truly filling gaps. A thoughtful SEPA categorical exemption would make it easier to upgrade existing transmission lines. We think this is important because it would incentivize utilities to strengthen our existing grid where possible rather than breaking new ground. However, the current language likely won't lead to this outcome. So we want to make sure that the pathway for accessing the exemption is practical and leads to meaningful efficiencies, while also ensuring there are clear protections for sensitive land and for tribal cultural resources. We really want to keep working with you on this and others, so it is a significant improvement over the status quo, and we reach the intent of this bill. So not only do we need transmission to move clean energy, but making these processes more efficient where possible will save ratepayers money. So thank you again for your work on this bill. I know it's a complex topic, but it is extremely important, and we would really like to see it continue to move with some changes. Senator Benke. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, got it. Peter, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Shoemake, members of the committee. For the record, Peter Godlewski with the Association of Washington Business signed an other this morning. We'd like to say we have, we think this bill is an improvement over what we saw last year, and I appreciate the work that has been done to further refine it over the interim. We have some members on multiple sides of this issue. Overall, we do really appreciate the CADEX language. It is critically important within this bill. We think it's a very useful tool for improving existing transmission lines cheaply and affordably at the lowest reasonable cost for ratepayers to help meet the immediate needs of transmission, which you've heard Nicholas and other folks speak to this morning. Some of our members do have some concerns about the Transmission Development Authority piece of the legislation. I think it's very important that we be mindful that anything that this agency does do or authority does not duplicate and add to the existing workload already facing developers trying to build transmission lines. That remains a large issue and is unfortunately not being touched by this bill. We do have some members who see some value in some of the other pieces of the legislation as well too. So overall, appreciate the work that's been done and look forward to further refining it. Thank you.
Ranky? Oh, pretty amazing. Thank you all for your testimony. And we're going to call up Cassie Bordelon, Matthew Hepner, and Jason Hudson. And while they're coming up, on deck would be Nadine Nadeau, Zachariah Baker, Maggie Douglas, and Brandon Huskeeper.
Can we share? Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Shoemake, members of the committee. Nice to see you all this morning. For the record, my name's Cassie Bordelon. I'm the Executive Director of Climate Jobs Washington. We are signed in other today on the bill. We're in support of the transmission authority that's created, prioritizing transmission, as you've heard from everyone. Bill that will provide tangible benefits to our electric grid, the job market, and our economy. We've been working close with developers, a bunch of the folks you've heard from this morning, independent power producers, environmental groups on this, and we do believe it's a really meaningful step forward in the collective effort that we're all moving towards to ensure that our grid has enough energy on it for us. We are noted as other today because the categorical exemption in the bill remains a top priority for labor. We are worried that the addition of new process in order to qualify for the exemption would make it more onerous than just status quo. So you could just go through SEPA instead, and it's very knowable. Folks are already aware of that. Updating or reconductoring existing transmission lines is one of the least disruptive activities that the state can do to increase the number of electrons on our system, while also providing jobs to thousands of people across the state, which you'll hear from my friends here. I'm happy to continue working with all of you, especially you, Senator Shoemake. Appreciate it. Thank you all for the time.
Good morning, Chair Shoemake and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Hepner. I'm the Executive Director of the Certified Electrical Workers of Washington, representing 12,000 IBEW electrical workers statewide, here today testifying other on Senate Bill 5466. We cannot underscore enough just how important the intent of this bill is. A transmission authority would secure long-term transmission planning and certainty into the future, and the categorical exemption for reconductoring would create jobs and ensure a reliable and functional grid that keeps the lights on and allows us to interconnect clean energy projects in a timely manner. We are signed in other today for two reasons. One, the transmission authority language currently lacks a financing mechanism to make the authority an effective and efficient entity. And two, the language creates additional time-consuming processes around the categorical exemption, which negates its purpose. Reconductoring is the #1 thing we can do to create more capacity on our aging grid, and we are way behind. This section is absolutely critical if we want to remain economically viable as a state. We appreciate the work of Chair Shoemake on this bill, and we look forward to improving it as the process moves along.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Shoemake, members of the committee. Jason Hudson on behalf of IBEW Local 77, representing utility workers in 35 of Washington's 39 counties. Our members do this work every day. And so we are deeply appreciative of this bill and the work that's gone into it thus far. We are at other at this point, but it is an optimistic other. We think this transmission authority is a really important concept. We've seen it work and be successful in other states, and we think it can address a lot of the concerns that have been raised about Washington's grid capacity and our ability to bring new non-emitting energy sources on to serve load. The place that I think that it can do the best work is across seams. Utilities do a really good job of planning for and developing infrastructure within their own service area where the benefits inure to their ratepayers, but across seams there are real opportunities for the state to play a really important role in this. We also really deeply appreciate the inclusion of Section 7. The inclusion of labor standards in this legislation is a very meaningful improvement that makes sure that this doesn't become a way to attract underqualified folks from out of state to do this work, because these are some of the best jobs in the state of Washington. Our members love what they do, and they're out there doing this work every day to keep the lights on and to serve all of Washington. And we are optimistic that when if some of these other concerns can be addressed, that we're going to be able to move forward in an important way to keep doing that work.
Senator Benke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the testimony today. Excuse me. You mentioned jobs and the things that's going on. We've had this problem in the state that we can't build anything. And so how many are we actually going to project jobs coming to the state of Washington? How many are we looking at that you guys have seen with this authority coming on board that this will unleash that prosperity?
Matthew, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll let you speak to the line side. On the inside, so one of the things in regards to the energy and the capacity, we're losing projects because we don't have the electricity available for these manufacturing facilities. So when you're building a manufacturing facility, not only do you have the construction jobs, you also have the operational jobs after the fact. And that internal revenue that comes to the state, local communities, local governments. Growth begets growth. But I mean, there was the one in Grand County, the Nucor Steel. There was Intelco, aluminum smelting. There was the Longview shipyards that lost that contract down to Texas. Some of the hydrogen facilities. But yeah, there's projects dropping like flies. Number one question we ask any developer is your power procured?
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, I think related to that question, I mean, the last number that we had talked about was, I think within the IBEW as a whole, we've got 2,000 members on the out-of-work books. And we talk to the members all the time, and it is, hang on, these projects are coming. They're on the books, you know, they're coming. But they come slow.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Can we have Nadine Nadeau, Zachariah Baker, Maggie Douglas, and on deck, Brendan Huskeeper. When you're ready, just go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nadine Nadeau. I'm with Conservation Northwest. We're testifying in support of this bill and appreciate its role in advancing Washington's goal of improving reliability and capacity of the electric transmission system, an essential component of meeting our clean energy and climate goals. We also think that you've put in the engagement in a more coordinated and collaborative conversation with advocates, communities, and tribal nations as the policy has been developed. We offer several recommendations to strengthen the bill's effectiveness and ensure that transmission will expand responsibly. We want to ensure the transmission planning is balanced with the protection of natural and cultural and community resources. The bill should more clearly direct the governing board to give equal weight to impacts on wildlife, critical habitat, overburdened communities, and tribal cultural resources, rather than treating these considerations discretionally. In Section 5, we recommend prioritizing upgrades within existing infrastructure and rights-of-way. Where new development is necessary, the bill should require avoidance, minimization, and impacts before mitigation to ensure no net loss of habitat function. We urge caution regarding the bill's SEPA category exemptions. Streamlining is appropriate, but exemptions should not apply in sensitive or critical areas where the environmental review remains essential to identify cumulative impacts. With that said, too, tribal consultation could be strengthened more than just the 60-day and compensated to allow tribes to engage earlier in the process. Thanks for your consideration of these modest requirements and to advance clean energy infrastructure.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Zach Baker. I'm the Regional and State Policy Director for the Northwest Energy Coalition. We're a coalition of about 100 organizations working to advance clean, equitable, and affordable policies. I'm here today to testify in support of SB5462. Transmission is a crucial piece of the puzzle in achieving our climate and clean energy goals. Unfortunately, we're behind on building and upgrading transmission. SB5466 could change that. A transmission authority would provide the state-level focus, attention, and coordination needed on this topic. Establishing a transmission authority at this juncture would help capitalize on transmission planning efforts underway in the region, ultimately resulting in upgraded and new transmission in Washington. This additional transmission would help improve reliability, support jobs, and move us closer to achieving our climate and clean energy goals. For those reasons, we support SB 5466, and thanks for the opportunity to testify today.
Go ahead, Maggie.
Hello, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Slaughter. Thanks for your time today. My name is Maggie Douglas. I'm here testifying on behalf of Puget Sound Energy, testifying as other today, but I do just want to take time and thank the sponsor for all of the work and the time and the energy that she's put into stakeholder in this bill over the interim. It's not nothing. It's been a lot. We are testifying as other today. Some of the provisions that we worked on over the interim didn't quite make it into this version. I think those have been pretty critical for the company, and we're eager to put those back in and address some of our outstanding concerns. We know that the things that help transmission development are timing certainty and process certainty. So that's really the basis of kind of what we're looking for moving forward. But again, want to just thank the sponsor and all the stakeholders for their ongoing work on this, and happy to field any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, and so I'm just going to call up our final testifier, Brandon Housekeeper. I think I saw you walk in.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brandon Housekeeper here today on behalf of the Alliance of Western Energy Consumers opposed to Senate Bill 5466. We appreciate the good work that has been done in the many conversations that have taken place around establishing an electric transmission authority in Washington State. We think that there is a critical role for the state to play in establishing a transmission authority. So I'll mention a couple of those. I think that focusing on affordability and reliability is really important. That it goes without saying here in Washington State. We've heard a lot of talk about those two issues. I think providing regional coordination and working with authorities that already exist and working with those who have the private capital to invest in transmission is an important role to play. And then I think you can help, and I think the legislation focuses on some non-wire alternatives that should be considered to make sure that we're getting the best out of the system that we have to increase the cost for the current ratepayers. I think, unfortunately, establishing the new authority also presents exposure and risk for ratepayers when the state goes beyond where the need is actually at. I think the focus, from our perspective, the focus on removing barriers, the permitting and planning aspects of what an authority could do, and that coordination is really important. But we do not believe that Washington State needs to be investing in and owning infrastructure. There's enough private capital in the marketplace to already do those things. What they're hung up on is the inability of the state to remove the barriers for them to site and build the transmission. We don't need additional dollars that will create this unknown world of how the state owning those and selling those to other entities is going to translate into costs for the ratepayers. We fear that that will add costs to the ratepayers, and so we would actually ask you to limit what the authority can actually own and do within that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Chair, that is our final testifier. 374 chose not to testify, pro 263, con 101, other 10.
Excellent. That closes the hearing for 5466, and we will reopen the hearing for public testimony of 5652. So, Madam Vice Chair, if you want to call up the first panel.
Yes, the first panel is Brian Davis, Karen Valoria, and Chad Rains. Please come on up. And we're going to try the 2-minute timer. We may have to evolve if necessary, but I think we should be okay. So, staff, if you could start that.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee. Thank you for your time and for your service. My name is Brian Davis. I'm from Burien. I'm testifying on my own behalf, but drawing heavily on my service as Vice Chair of the Burien Airport Committee. When you first heard testimony on this bill last year, those in favor included the Mayor of Des Moines, the Deputy Mayor of Burien, and a member of the Sea-Tac City Council. Then came the Port of Seattle in strong opposition. And in that moment, it became crystal clear to me that meaningful collaboration between the port and the airport cities does not exist. The port is pursuing a multi-billion-dollar expansion that would, in 10 years' time, increase aircraft traffic from 1,100 takeoffs and landings a day to 1,500. And yet the port claims this would have no significant impact. It says this as it hides behind archaic federal regulations like those having to do with noise. The government uses an outdated DNL standard, a sort of averaging, which ignores current science about devastating cumulative impacts of high decibel noise. People in our community are literally taking a beating from all those flights overhead. Yet federal noise standards give the same weight to 1 every minute as they do at an airport with just a few dozen operations a day like Payne Field and Everett. That works just fine for the commissioners and the staff at the Port of Seattle who say, hey, we're just following the rules. 2 years ago, the port pledged $5 million to a pilot program to fix or replace failed noise insulation installations known as port packages. Sounded good in the press release, but the port has yet to repair or replace a single port package. SB5652 would, after decades of delay, establish timelines and accountability for a viable repair program. To protests, I expect we'll hear about cost. The port's aviation revenues last year exceeded $500 million. Seattle-Tacoma Airport generates billions of dollars for the regional economy, but our residents don't share in that wealth. Burien is nearly broke. Under the flight path lies a blighted landscape where economic development is difficult, and with every added flight, the quality of life erodes even farther. SB 5652 is not about handouts. It's about appropriate compensation for our community's disproportionate sacrifice. Please vote yes. And I thank you. Chad.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for hearing my testimony. My name is Chad Rains, and I am a business owner that lives and operates just 2 blocks west of North Sea-Tac Park, right off of 12th Avenue. Hundreds of planes fly directly over my house every day. My business is significantly impacted by the airplane traffic that constantly flies over my house. My neighbor, who runs a daycare, her business is significantly impacted by the airplane traffic as well. My daughter attends this daycare, and I watch her and her friends every day shudder and clamp their ears as airplanes fly overhead. It is extremely painful to watch this, knowing that airplanes could and very well should just be flying over North Sea-Tac Park, just a couple blocks to the east, and they don't. What's more concerning is the choice to use the same flight path over our homes at night. There's an agreement with Sea-Tac Airport to attempt to limit the landings over our homes to just 3 between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. Being allowed just 5 hours of sleep every night is heartbreaking, but they don't even honor the agreement. I went to the Part 150s. I heard them say that there's 3 airplanes a night, and that is completely misrepresented data. I went ahead and paid for it. I'm a data guy, and you can purchase the flight records from Flight Radar 24, which I have done. There are some nights where there are 40 planes a night landing between midnight and 5 a.m. I'm happy to share the data. I'll email it to anybody who wants it. This has driven me and my family to a very bad place. This is abuse like I never thought we would experience in Burien, and I am leaving. I'm putting my house for sale up next month. I'm taking my family and my business out of it. How could we have mitigated this? Well, I live in a failed port package house. We've requested twice for new windows, denied twice. Attic insulation would help. There's lots of things that would help. Having a reasonable time where airplanes fly during the night, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. seems reasonable. All of those things would be extremely helpful. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Karen Valoria, and I'm a resident of Burien, a 20-year resident. I live in Boulevard Park, which is North Burien, right under the SEA flight path. I bought the house in 2002, knowing that it had a double-pane window port package and insulation up on the attic, which was fine for the first couple of years. Then I started noticing things like because I have double-paned windows and there's moisture in there between the panes, I can't clean it. So there is mold growing between my windows. I know that's a health hazard. There is I hear noise now in my house where I never used to. The outside has always been noisy, but in my house I hear it now. So I was really excited when I heard about this port package pilot that the port was doing. I was waiting to be contacted, but for some reason, well, I know the reason, but now I am no longer within the boundary. I am right outside of the boundary. So even if people do get port packages, people like me won't even be able to access it. I worked with the port to have a noise monitor installed on my property because for part of the Part 150 study, the noise monitor was in place for 2 weeks. It showed noise incidents overhead every 3 minutes for 2 weeks from SEA and King County Airport. So I just want you to take into account the cumulative health benefits of listening to that over and over again. We understand that the airport's not going away. Port is advertising now that there are direct flights from here to Asia, which means bigger planes, and those planes tend to, because of the time difference, they tend to leave in the middle of the night to get over there. So and also with all the expansion going on, we feel that the port can be a better neighbor for those of us affected below. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories and your experiences. Very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Rebecca Deming, Marie Rule, and Steve Edmiston. And we have at least one person on remote, but for those of you who are in person, why don't we go ahead?
Good morning, Chair Shoemake, Ranking Member Banky, and distinguished members of Senate Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee. I'm Rebecca Deming, and I serve as the Community Development Director for the City of Des Moines. I'm here today to express our strong support for SB 5652 and thank Senator Orwell for her leadership in this issue. The City of Des Moines is under the Sea-Tac Airport's flight path. Our residents live daily with significant environmental impacts from airport operations. This bill represents a vital opportunity to correct long-standing environmental injustices. We strongly endorse the core principles of SB 5652. Mandatory environmental justice plans requiring port districts to embed EJ principles into their core operations is a necessary step towards proactive health equity. Independent cumulative impact assessments. The requirement for an independent review by the UW is crucial for accountability and transparency before any significant expansion or action takes place. Funding for mitigation. Authorizing ports to use funds to mitigate the harm they cause ensures communities aren't left to shoulder the health and financial burdens alone. As this bill evolves, we support strengthening the bill by explicitly defining and enhancing the role of local governments, like ours. We recommend adding requirements for ports to formally consult with affected cities during the community engagement process and for all data and reports to be shared directly with local city governments. Local citizens like ours face a disproportionate burden of the airports, but don't receive its fair share of mitigation of that disproportionate burden. The bill should help address the health and safety aspects for individuals along with the financial challenges of local governments facing depressed tax bases and economic challenges from being under the flight path of the state's busiest airport. Ensuring collaborative framework between the port and local jurisdictions they impact is key to making this bill truly effective. Thank you for your time and consideration for the residents of the city, and it's a huge issue for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to say that it looks like you're reading, and so if you'd like to just send that to us as well, that would be given already.
Thank you.
Steve, we'll go to Steve, and then we'll do Marie Rule. So go ahead.
My name is Steve Edmiston. I live in the city of Des Moines. I'm immediately south of Sea-Tac Airport. I've been advocating as a volunteer for airport neighbor communities for nearly a decade, ranging from my own city's airport committee to more recently the state's Civil Aviation Coordination Commission, where I was the governor's appointee to represent the citizens on that commission. I'm here today to speak in favor of SB 5652. Now more than ever, our airport neighbor communities need help from the state. From the World Health Organization's 2018 noise study to our own state's report in 2020 on the environmental and public health impacts from Sea-Tac Airport and the University of Washington's Move Up study on ultrafine particles, we do now know a few things about the public health harms from aviation. The Those human harms, noise causes cardiovascular harms, well documented. The pollution, the ultrafine particles cause respiratory illnesses and are linked to cancers, well documented, including in our own state study. For me, one key aspect of this bill is that it helps address the gap between what the science is telling us and outdated federal regulatory scheme that applies to aviation. For example, right now, as Mr. Davis said, FAA and the Port of Seattle are moving ahead with the Strategic Airport Master Plan. We're going to add 87,000 more flights over our airport neighbor communities on an annual basis. The decision by the FAA authorizing this, being appealed by 3 cities, and I'm not joking, it does say those 87,000 flights will not present an impact to the airport neighbor communities at all, requiring any mitigation. No impact, right? So you might ask, how is that possible? And the reason is this: the FAA and the port only want to comply and have to comply with federal standards. And I see my red lights on.
Yeah, just a few more seconds.
Okay. The work being performed under this bill asks only this: we assess the true impacts using a clear, science-based approach, including, wait for it, all studies, all science. Don't cut off at the federal standards. That's not fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Marie, if you can hear my voice, please unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I don't really have anything prepared. I'm a citizen who lives in Normandy Park. It's maybe a mile and a half west of the airport as a crow flies. I have 2 daughters at Raisbeck Aviation. My son's at Sylvester. My husband works at Mar Vista Elementary. Excuse me, I'm a mental health social worker. And I just wanted to give some lived context to this. We're talking about health issues. I just wrote down, in my direct neighborhood, there's 7,000 people in Normandy Park. I don't know them all. 8 people who have cancer. My neighbor Lou right next door, Dave across the street, Gretchen's husband died of throat cancer a couple years ago. My friend Karen's Bob died of pancreatic cancer about 3 years ago. The Ballast family is struggling with brain cancer. My friend Julie has a tumor in her leg right now. I have breast cancer. I'm on my 4th round of chemotherapy. We built our house here 18 years ago. And when we built the house, we used all our money to build this house. Beautiful community. My kids love it. This is our home. The community is our home. There were not 443,000 flights taking off that year. So people say, well, why don't you just pick up and leave, leave the community? We can't. This is our home. So any bill that supports any sort of pollution mitigation, I'm always going to support. I don't know all the people in Normandy Park, but for me to know 8 people, and my friend Lori, right across First Avenue, she's probably 0.3 of a mile closer to the airport than me, breast cancer last year. So it's very real. We're very healthy people. I have HEPA filters all in my house. The one downstairs cost $1,200. I have health care. I have resources, and we are still all getting sick right here. And it's likely because of the airport. I looked up a CDC study, like 8 years ago, and within a 3-mile radius, and Tina, thank you for presenting all that information, but within a 3-mile radius of the airport, breast cancer, all these cancers are increased. So again, thank you so much, and go Tina.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Okay, Alexandra Johnson, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Shoemake and committee members. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Alexandra, and I'm the Senior Climate and Environmental Policy Analyst for the Duwamish River Community Coalition, or DRCC. We were born from the Duwamish River being declared a Superfund site in 2001, and DRCC was created as the technical advisory group partnered with the EPA on the cleanup. Since then, we have expanded our work to include youth engagement and education, climate justice, as well as other aspects of wellness in the community. And so, you're hearing people are really suffering. And to back it up with some of the data, a study from 2023 that we looked at shows that the Duwamish Valley, which is made up of South Seattle and other parts of White Center and Tukwila, has a decade lower of life expectancy and almost 4 times the child asthma hospitalization rates compared to northern Seattle. And then a lot of people have talked about the noise quality and the noise impacts today. I want to emphasize that the way we do standard weighting of what is considered noise and how we give validation to that is considered A weighting, and more environmental justice considerations put more emphasis on B weighting, and that is noise. Sorry, my cat's going to make a cameo. And that is more noise at those higher and lower frequencies, noises you feel. And the effects of those are being studied right now, but it's so crucial that we validate and legitimize that experience, because right now the port and KCIAC or KCIA only report on A-weighted noise, and B-weighted loud noises at those frequencies, they mimic ADHD symptoms, they raise blood pressure, they affect your sleep, they raise stress hormones in your body. Our kids are not given a fair chance. My colleague grew up in South Park and couldn't study at the library because of how loud it was when the planes would fly overhead. We have done what we can to distribute HEPA filters to the community, and we've had a historically positive relationship with the port that we're ready to continue with them, but something needs to happen and our regional authorities need to do more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Jeff Harbaugh, if you can hear me, please go ahead. And then on deck would be Joe Vinson and Maria Battaiola.
Can you hear me and see me now?
I can hear you, and you should be showing up in a minute, but we don't see you yet. There you go. There you go.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Great.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
My name is Jeff Harbaugh. I'm in my 3rd term on Burion's Airport Committee, and my 2nd term as a Burien Community Representative to the START Committee. I'm here to speak in support of SB5652. Over 9 years of involvement, this is my first time seeing an action which could have a global impact on the communities and stakeholders surrounding the report. I'm deviating from my remarks a little because I work closely with Brian and Karen and know some of the other people, and I can't say what they've said any better. The health impacts of noise and particle pollution on individuals from airport operations are well documented. The costs, direct and indirect, to the cities and other stakeholders are real but specific to each community, so some discretion in how the funds are used is appropriate. I'm a finance guy. I went and read the port's financial statements for 2024. It's 130 pages and delightfully tedious. Page 37 shows a cash flow where they had a balance at the end of the year of $739 million. Now, one number doesn't have anything to do with an organization's financial situation, but I couldn't help imagining what a small portion of that could do for Burien and the airport impacts. The Federal Aviation Administration won't talk to us about this stuff. START is not a decision-making body, and in any event, we spend most of our time on topics with no chance of significantly improving conditions for impacted citizens in the near future. As somebody on the airport committee called it bureaucratic capture, we can't seem to get the things we want to talk about on the agenda. So we're here to ask you for your help with this. I want to thank Senator Orwell, and I urge you to support her bill. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Harbaugh. Joe Vinson available? There you go.
Present.
Okay, good. I have you on remote, but you're in person, so it's nice to see you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of this committee. For the record, my name is Joe Vinson, and I serve on the City of Sea-Tac's City Council. I'm here today to testify in support of Senate Bill 5652. On behalf of the City of Sea-Tac, I want to thank Senator Orwell for her leadership and continued focus on communities that experience disproportionate environmental and health impacts from port and airport operations. The City of Sea-Tac strongly supports Senate Bill 5652 because it establishes a clear, accountable framework to address cumulative environmental health impacts in communities located near large airport facilities. Sea-Tac is the city where the state's largest airport is physically located, embedded in residential neighborhoods. And as a result, our residents experience sustained exposure to environmental health impacts associated with airport operations. Senate Bill 5652 appropriately centers overburdened communities and vulnerable populations in evaluating those impacts. This bill recognizes that addressing cumulative environmental health impacts requires more than isolated or one-time efforts. Senate Bill 5652 requires qualifying port districts to adopt environmental justice implementation plans, develop meaningful community engagement plans, and use evidence-based assessments to evaluate the impacts of significant port actions before they are approved. Importantly, the bill also requires transparency and accountability. It calls for an independent assessment, public engagement, and ongoing evaluation of mitigation strategies to ensure that they are effective and responsive to community needs. Senate Bill 5652 provides a meaningful and balanced approach that respects Port Authority while ensuring environmental health and considerations are meaningfully addressed. On behalf of the City of Sea-Tac, we respectfully urge you to support this legislation. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Maria Batteola, and while you're unmuting, I'm going to call up Joe Dusenberry, Eric Fitch, Ken Short, and John Flanagan. I know that's 4, so if someone wants to sit in the front row, that's fine. Go ahead, Maria, if you can hear me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Honorable Chair Shoemake, Vice Chair Slatter, and committee members. For the record, my name is Maria Batteola, Chair of Aviation Community Health, Environment, and Climate Advocates, or Aviation Chicas for short. Our coalition includes Beacon Hill Council, Duwamish River Community Coalition, Climate Solutions, Defenders of Highline Forest, and Tree Action Seattle. Our name expresses our mission. I also serve on the Commercial Aviation Work Group. We thank Senator Orwell and strongly support SB 5652. I appreciate the personal stories and testimony by our fellow aviation-impacted community members, so I'll speak on big picture points that have not been made. The 2025 King County Strategic Climate Action Plan identified aviation and other emissions at 16% of all greenhouse gas emissions in King County. That number includes 13%, or 3.1 million metric tons of CO2e emitted from Sea-Tac airport operations and enabled flights. It also states that communities within 10 miles of Sea-Tac Airport are, quote, associated with higher rates of pervasive health concerns, unquote, from the Washington 2020 House Bill 1101 Required Health Report. The State Department of Ecology identified South King County and South Seattle as air quality overburdened communities under the Climate Commitments Act. The impacted populations near the airport and under its flight paths is estimated to be close to 500,000 people, with 60% people of color and 29% immigrants and refugees living in South Seattle and the 7 cities around the airport. Sea-Tac airport mitigations do not address aviation air pollution health impacts and addresses aviation noise pollution mitigation for those living close to the airport only. Senate Bill 5652 will have the Port of Seattle Sea-Tac Airport self-identify its aviation and environmental cumulative impacts, engage with communities, and put in place mitigations that will be informed by UW and public health science and community studies with proven mitigations.
Thank you.
I quote Beacon Hill Council in close. We don't have federal NEPA to protect us, and we are asking for your full support. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I don't see any questions. So we're going to go to people in person here. And Mr. Dusenberry, go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Joe Dusenberry. I'm the chairman of the Des Moines City Council Airports Advisory Committee and the community representative to the Sea-Tac Area Roundtable. I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 5652. The Port of Seattle is one of the largest governmental organizations in the state. The district encompasses all of King County and has annual operating budgets and planned capital expenditures that exceed that of some of the state agencies. This legislation is modeled on the language in Title 70A RCW. the legislation that governs environmental health and safety and requires several large state agencies to develop agency-specific goals, and I'm quoting, and actions to reduce environmental and health disparities and for otherwise achieving environmental justice in agency programs. Those agencies are departments of agriculture, commerce, ecology, health, natural resources, transportation, and the Puget Sound Partnership. This bill, if enacted, simply requires the Port of Seattle to do what other state agencies are already required to do. We agree with the port's planners that demand at the airport will continue to grow into the next decade, and that we must plan for and provide that growth in order to maintain Sea-Tac's position as one of the premier airports in the country. But as we plan for that growth, all of us, that means all of us, need to realize that increasing the total amount of passenger volume from 52.6 million per year to 64.1 million, and the number of flight operations from 429,000 to 510,000 per year over the next decade will have significant impacts on the surrounding communities. It is vitally important that the airport communities continue to be safe, economically viable, and healthy cities. This legislation is a first step in ensuring that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Fitch, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Shoemake, Vice Chair Slatter, members of the committee. And my name is Eric Fitch. I'm the Executive Director at the Washington Public Ports Association, here today in opposition to Senate Bill 5652 and speaking specifically to the striking amendment. First, in general, my port members are publicly elected governments that serve transportation demand in Washington state to facilitate mobility and economic opportunity. Airports around our state are managed by port districts. They are public places where Washingtons go to travel, to see family and friends, access medical care, travel for work. Many of our shippers use them for exporting Washington's agricultural products. We are concerned that the studies proposed here will make it more challenging for those ports to serve aviation demand. The striking amendment brings back several concepts that have been proposed over the years with respect to SEA Airport. First, the UW study. The state previously funded a study to which Port of Seattle voluntarily contributed funds and information. It was subsequently used to suggest that the port, again, an elected government, was negligent in considering public health, when in reality, the Port of Seattle is a national leader in addressing airport impacts. Next, the bill proposes a Department of Commerce-led work group to help address airport impacts. The state already created a work group in 2019 to look at siting the next commercial aviation facility. Port of Seattle, WPPA, other ports participated and supported that work, which has been stalled time and time again, amended by the legislature, and has not provided any concrete recommendations. Our ports and our transportation sector need state partnership to address aviation demand and its impacts, and we're concerned this bill does not achieve that. For that reason, we are opposed. Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. Can I call up Ken Short and John Flanagan, please? Madam Chair, these are our final two testifiers.
Thank you, Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. For the record, John Flanagan with the Port of Seattle, testifying today in opposition to Senate Bill 5652. We're still reviewing the updated substitute that became available late Monday evening, and we'll plan to follow up with the committee and prime sponsor with a more detailed analysis and a summary of our concerns. Based on the conversations with the prime sponsor and representatives from the various near airport communities, I want to say we share the same goals. I think it's that we disagree about how to structure legislation to reach those goals. At a high level, the port's primary concern with the updated language is about self-determination and the division of powers. The bill sets up new processes for planning, assessment, and implementation of mitigation programs, and it requires the port to implement those programs, but without the port playing a material role in structuring how the programs work. The current language gives other public entities the authority to dictate use of port revenues, staff, and resources in an ongoing way. Due to restrictions in federal law, as some folks have mentioned here today, the port is also unable to dedicate revenues collected from airport operations towards those new mitigation programs that are required by the bill. Therefore, we'd be required to redirect funds from the seaport, other ongoing programming, to pay for the new programming created within the bill. There's also some confusion about a potential concern with how the new mitigation grants are administered under the updated language. The same organizations that are in charge of setting rules for the new programs and determining implementation and mitigation strategies are also given the authority to receive funds. It's unclear whether the port would be obligated to make port resources available for those grant recipients as well. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Happy to answer any questions.
One quick question. So you've been doing some mitigation already, I mean, based
Correct.
on the testimony. So how's that funded?
So I can talk, you're talking about noise mitigation specifically.
Right, I mean, you've been doing some of the mitigation work already, so it seems like, this is not so different. It's just simply creating a much more structured pathway for future. What's the difference?
Yes, and I would say this to start. Only the Port of Seattle and SFO are even looking at redressing failed noise packages. I know Boston Logan was mentioned, I think, in a previous question as well. They're in the very, very early planning phases of that. Over the past 2 years, since the port dedicated revenue towards this and since the state offered some money, which was swept in the last budget, but the port conducted sound insulation repair and replace pilot to assess how we would do testing in homes, reporting on faulty noise packages, and then how we would move forward with repairs. I'll say this, as of like this morning even, we are in the design phase for 3 homes, and I know that that is an insubstantial number in comparison to the whole. But in the initial phase, I think we put out a voluntary survey at 200 homes. We got about 60 responses. Of that, 10% qualified under the parameters that we used initially. And so this has all been part of what we've been calling a pilot to hopefully, learn a lot of lessons about how this could function in the future and how we could plus up programming. But it's moving, I think, more slowly than folks are happy with, obviously. And we've heard loud and clear the concerns there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ken.
Good morning, Chair Schumacher, members of the committee. For the record, Ken Short with the Association of Washington Business, here today in opposition. AWB and our members are concerned with the potential impacts this bill could have on the efficient operation of the state's largest transportation hub. Many of our members are focused on the efficiency and reliability because their businesses depend on it every single day. This airport is a critical gateway for people and goods to move in and out of Washington. It's vital to our state's economy. Any constraints or delays in programming needed to respond to future capacity directly affects those businesses and, by extension, Washington jobs. SEA is Washington's front door to the global economy. It's policies that make it harder for the port to respond to demand or operate efficiently risk far-reaching consequences. So with that, we urge the committee to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Just one follow-up on that. So some people testified that they're leaving and they have small businesses. I think is that something that you've taken into consideration? And I don't hear that they want to necessarily stop business, but they just want to make it safer to live, with respect to their health. How do you calculate this, right? Like, yes, you're concerned about business, but nobody seemed to say they don't want business here. They actually want to be able to live here and have their community here and business. I'm curious about when you think about businesses leaving, how is that actually linked to just keeping people safe and dealing with noise?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and certainly heard some of the earlier testimony. I think I just want to kind of probably echo a lot of what John brought up with absolutely share a lot of the goals here and want to emphasize the work already being done by Port of Seattle. I think they're one of the nation leaders in some of these efforts. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that progress begins to build momentum and see what those efforts result in. But I appreciate the point there. Thank you.
Yeah, and just the follow-up that customers too, right, in the communities. I'm just curious as to how you make those calculations because I'm not an expert. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, that was the final testifier. And did you have a question? That was the final testifier. A total of 284 people chose not to testify. Pro 186, con 97, other 1. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our hearing of 5652, and that concludes our work for the day.